Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where we talk about growth, systems, and what actually works. I'm your host, Paul Guyon. Norman Leach said a year before the Canada's Grey Cup Championship game, and you made a public commitment that tickets, which is what historically happened, were never going to be discounted, which is usually what happens at the end, just before the cup, to make sure you fill the stadium. Then reality showed up. 4,000 tickets were unsold. I think this was about a week beforehand. Millions of dollars were on the line. The owner mortgaged his house to make this thing happen, and they'd previously been losing money. So there was a lot of pressure on Norman. The media kept asking when you were going to blink. So most people would have just discounted the tickets, filled the stadium, and lost money again. But you didn't. Take us back to that moment, and welcome, Norman.
Oh, thank you. And no, I was one of those things that we had made a commitment early that we weren't going to discount tickets. I wasn't going to break my word. We had to find a way to make it work. And the media were just salivating, and they had their gotcha moment. See, he blinked,
Yeah.
he's done. They were just waiting for me to say it. And so we did a press conference on the Monday. There were 4,000 available. On Tuesday, they again asked me, when are you discounting those tickets? I said, we're sold out. And but how could you have sold out? We had one day, you couldn't sell 4,000 tickets. I said, no, I didn't sell them, but the whole lot of kids and elderly people and veterans who are going to be going to the game for free on those 4,000. So we filled the stadium, made a statement, and the result was that today that game sells out. It's a game that happened in November. There's never tickets available past June because people learned you don't wait for the tickets.
And like I mentioned previously, you were always down to the wire to fill the stadium, and typically we're losing money. So ever since then, it's been selling out, right? That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
At full ticket price, right? So no
Yeah.
discounts, no, just you sell it out. Yeah, no, the 3 games before ours, and I only look back 3 years, had all lost money. And in fact, at one point, one of the owners had to chip in $300,000 to top up the staff wages.
Oh,
I'm pretty
wow.
proud of it.
Yeah. So a year earlier, on the second day of your employment, you had a press conferences when you, unbeknownst to the board and unbeknownst to everyone else, you made that public commitment. What drove you to do that? Why did you do that?
I thought that it was a lousy way to start the year that we were going to come into this event to have the media immediately asking, when are we discounting tickets? The marketer in me said that's going to drive ticket prices down. If people are expecting a year before, it's going to be bargain basement seats. Why would they buy full price? They'll just wait, which would cause all kinds of cash flow issues and things for us. And so I spontaneously just said, ain't happening. We're not going to lower those. We're not going to lower those prices. Thing. My board, I think I'd been employed maybe a week when we did that press conference, and the board looked
Yeah.
down the table at me and said, okay, but they were football fans. They're tourism people. They expected I was going to discount the tickets. So when I made that statement, I was out on the ledge by myself.
Yeah. And they looked at you and they said, okay, but what kind of pressure did they put on you?
There was for the first little while, ticket sales were the core fan base that's always going to buy tickets. So it didn't become an issue till about 6 months in when ticket prices slowed down. And like the Super Bowl, our Canadian football game, the Grey Cup, depends on who's in. And the perfect solution would have been for me to have had our hometown team up against our Eastern rivals from the East. That would have been the perfect. They would have sold out, no problem. However, I got the worst possible combination. I got the team that the fans in Calgary, where the game was, the fans there hated both teams. They had no interest in either team. So the hometown tickets just stopped instantly. And then all of a sudden you started seeing ads. Now, remember, this is a while ago, but you saw some ads in the paper, some ads on Kijiji saying, tickets for sale, who wants my ticket? So if there's a resale ticket market, selling the ones I had was not going to happen. So at that point, the board started to say, this better work. better work. And you were right in your intro. You said that the owner had mortgaged his house. So he would come in every once in a while. Though I have to admit, he was the best of them all. Most on the line, he was the best of them all and saying, let's see where this goes. But the board itself never came in and said you're going to get fired. But there was a lot of things done, meetings held, etc., that said you better make this work. And it was
Yeah.
too late to fire me. The contract was for 18 months. We were a year in, 6 months to go. They weren't going to fire me before the game, but it would have impacted on my career for 10 years in that city, because the team has the same following in that city. It has the same following as the Dallas Cowboys do. Even
Yeah.
when they're having a terrible year, they've got great
Yeah.
fans. Right. So,
Right. And what were you telling yourself? Did you wish that you had not made that commitment, or we second guessing, or
no,
your family? What were they saying?
I've got a sign up in my office, an old Viking saying, I think, that says, don't look backwards. That's not the direction we're going. So once
Yeah.
we committed, you had to commit. We adapted. Like I say, we adapted and brought in kids and seniors and veterans. It was
Yeah.
an adaptation, but I didn't break the core promise, right? I didn't break the core promise. I don't know about you, Paul, but I hate when I ride on an airplane and I'm sitting next to you and I find you paid $200 for your ticket and I paid $1,000 for mine, and we're sitting in adjoining seats. I always hate that moment. So we were not going to do that to the fans. It was dishonest to the fans to say, okay, we took your $500, but the guy sitting next to you got it for $250. Just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I don't think the fans were bothered that the people who got in free were children and veterans and disabled people that deserved to be there but couldn't afford to be there. I think
And
that built goodwill, I think.
he did. And we dealt with the organizations for those groups. So we weren't choosing who got to sit. We gave 100 tickets to the Legion, in your case, the American Legion, but in mine, just the Legion. We gave them
Yeah.
100 tickets and give them out to your members who you think should go. So I didn't even have to take responsibility for who was there because a credible partner found the right people.
So, were you deliberately trying to change the behavior of the discounting, or was this just a spur of the moment decision?
No, I'm a marketer by trade, and so I cringed when I saw what had happened. And the result was 3 games before ours had lost money. The owners had to step in and top up the funds, and I didn't take the job on to do that. So it was to find a way to make it work, and finding a way to make it work meant that we had to sell the tickets, because sponsorships carry some, but definitely we had to sell out tickets. And remember, the 4,000 tickets that didn't sell represented 10% of the tickets available. That 10% in most business is your profit margin, right? That's where you make
Yeah.
your money, because the bills are all paid, everybody's hired, everything's done. If I could have found 4,000 tickets, it would have driven everything. As it was, we still made $2.5 million profit on by changing a whole lot of things inside. But it wasn't that I was out to change the world. I just wanted a successful business, a successful game on the night. And I wanted to make sure that the owner didn't lose his business.
And what were the sponsors? Were they worried about it? They have obviously had heard about the no discounting, and they probably have sponsored this before, many times before. Were they worried about their part of the
They
deal?
they were actually the opposite, because they saw it as someone's treating this with the seriousness it depends on, because their
Uh-huh.
brands were attached to the game. So when the game lost money, it didn't shine well on the sponsor. When the game didn't go off properly, it didn't shine well on the sponsors. So when the sponsors, I'm still friend one of the beer company reps that worked with us, and he's told me on a couple occasions, said, we are so grateful you did that, because if nothing else, you were saying this game is for fans and we're going to have fun, and it's not going to be about cobbling something together at the end. We're going to make it work. So he was happy and still comments on it.
Yeah. So why did everybody think or assume that discounting was the answer? Is it just because that's what they did in the past?
Yeah, because that was what they did in the past, and keeping in mind that the Secretariat group of employees that ran it were on 18-month contracts. So I think what was happening is by the time the game came around 3 or 4 months, people were already looking ahead to their next contract. What was the next thing I'm going to do? And so the game
Hmm.
got less serious treatment. I don't think anybody did that on purpose or maliciously, but it's human nature. When you know your job's coming to an end, you're going to start looking for what's the next opportunity. I just went in, I don't know what the right expression is. I went in bull hog. I just said, I'm going to do this. We're going to be successful, and I'll figure out what I'm doing 18 months from now.
You say you weren't thinking of that? You were thinking about
Well,
the goal.
I didn't think about the end of it. Like in terms of myself, I was just, let's get a good game. Let's do a good game and let's make the money. And when that's done, then I'll think about where Norman's going next. Can't be positive. Can't be half-hearted, right? Many of the cases where you have to act with speed and clarity, it just means someone has to make a decision and you need to move on. Well, I don't work
Yeah.
great in big companies. I don't work great in big companies because too many meetings, too many planning meetings, too many, maybe we should have a meetings for me to sit.
Yeah.
I like to be in the eye of the storm, love to make the decisions as quick as I can.
I'm with you there. And in some ways, if you think about it, you burn the boats. You burn the boats so that you had no choice but to go ahead because there was no retreat. And you and you were mentioning the employees looking at their next opportunity. That's what you did is you burned the boat so you couldn't retreat. Now they were thinking about the next thing. When you think about your exit strategy and you're supposed to be doing this mission when you can't serve two masters at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. I think it's a biblical prophecy or a biblical statement, but you can't your master conflict with the other master that maybe you want. You know what I mean? I,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And the team, I put the team together. I put the team together. It was people I knew and trusted. They knew and trusted me. And so when this all came up the last couple of months, that it was clear we weren't going to sell and all the rest, they would, there's black humor in the office. Just should we get caught so we can sleep in your basement, Norman? That kind of black humor, but no one ever took it seriously. No one ever said, we're just going to give up now and let's walk away. Let Norman be on his own. The team was right there to the end. And many of them are still my friends.
What were some of the conversations that were standing out in those final months or that final week?
I think it was the fact that the team itself, the team I was working for that didn't get to play in the game because it's the host city, that host city, they were concerned that the name didn't get tarnished by any of this. They didn't want their brand tarnished by what might or might not happen. So there was that. Staff were there, they wanted to make it, but their concerns were more about, will we have the budget we planned for to make this spectacular? Or was I gonna cut back on budget? And I said, no, we won't cut back on budget. That's what it was. We're gonna give a great show. We cut a lot of things that no one ever saw. We trimmed a lot of things that we didn't have to do. We made less free parking, for example. So you had to be an actual sponsor to get free parking instead of just giving it out to people who came along and said, I'm friends of the mayor. Can I get a free parking spot? No, we're going to charge you. So we enforced the rules. There was no sort of slush moment that we could offer those kind of things. We stuck to our promise to everybody. We were going to give a great game. And it was interesting that the one friend of the mayor who called and said, I'm a friend of the mayor, get me free parking, got a call from the mayor saying back off, because I called the mayor directly and said, I don't need this. I don't need this guy in my face. Can you deal
Oh,
with him? And the mayor called him and said, stop it. You're a millionaire.
wow.
Pay the parking spot. So
Yeah, isn't
we
it?
had a real support people. And I think we had that support because we never wavered from what we had promised. It wasn't that somebody could say, we did it for you, you did it for the friend of the mayor. Why won't you do it for me? No one got special treatment. Everybody was coming to the game to have a good time.
Yeah. And so You were trimming stuff, so you're focusing on the blocking and tackling of the fundamentals of running a business. So you
Yes.
looked at where the fat was and you cut it. And so that's one of the ways that you made a profit. What were some of the other things that you did that helped that along?
We had 700 volunteers, which was about 200 more than we had expected. We had thought we'd have a bigger staff on game day. We converted those to volunteer positions. That said, we gave everybody. So November in where I live, it's like where you live. It is cold in November. It can be cold. So everybody got a beautiful winter jacket, the winter parka that they could wear with the emblem on it. They were part of a team. We didn't put I dislike when we put volunteer on because it's somehow we lessen that position because then
Yeah.
they're not as important as the staff or the executive director, in my case, the president. Nothing, I only have one piece of bump that has president on it that was ever publicly seen. Everything else, if I got a nice bronze statue from the board, it says president on it. There's even a plaque in the stadium, a bronze plaque in the stadium with my name on it saying, thank you for your work. That said president. But when I was talking to a volunteer, they had no idea who I was. Those 700 people, just some guy came along and talked to them. They didn't know if I was a volunteer. They didn't know if I was the lead volunteer. So I think that building that team, we could trim a lot of the things that we thought we were going to spend money on. But again, the surface was you had to show them they got a beautiful jacket out of it for doing it. That we got a really good deal from a manufacturer who gave us a deal because they became a sponsor. So we, rather than spending all the money on the jackets, we got them donated.
Oh, wow. Plus, they weren't personalized and embroidered, so that brought your costs down too, right?
They just had the crest of the team, the crest of the game was embroidered, but it was a one shot embroidered. They didn't have to reset machines and all that. It was
Yeah.
unsetting. So they could do the relatively expensive, and then they donated them to us. So for us, we could support our volunteers, make them feel part of it by being able to bring in a couple hundred other volunteers, dramatically lowered the game day costs. And the public never knew, right? The public never knew. They just got served well by people in nice gray jackets with a logo on it.
Yeah. What worried you the most during that time?
There's a couple things. The team is, like I said, like the Cowboys, the storied team. So I really didn't want to be the guy that embarrassed the team. So I was driven by not embarrassing the team.
Mm.
Absolutely, I was driven by that. The owner was incredibly good to me. The owner of the team was incredibly good to me personally. I don't mean financially, but just treated me with respect, let me run the business. He could have, his house was on the line. He could easily have nitpicked, been in there every day micromanaging. He didn't. I think he was in my office about 3 times, and I really appreciated that because it meant that he wasn't worried. He was giving me his full confidence. So I didn't want to let him down. Didn't want to let him personally down. The house, look, he was a multimillionaire. I'm sure that in a couple of years he'd paid off the mortgage and it would have been fine. But it would have been that I had to look him in the eye in town when I was in Safeway. I had to go look and see him in the eye and say, I did that to you. So I didn't want to do that. And we
Yeah.
wanted to leave a legacy, which we did. We wanted to leave a legacy that this game would set a standard for others. And so that drove me more than were we going to make $1 million, $2 million. Quite frankly, with the reputation that the game had, if I had made $500,000, I would have been seen as a hero. The 2.5 million was just a really nice number. It worked out
Yeah.
really well, but it was a part of doing the right thing all the time. And yes, making mistakes, taking half a step backward and going forward again. So when if I lost sleep at all, it was I wanted to make sure the reputation of the city and the owner and the team were intact after I left.
Yeah. And I imagine people were also asking you, are you sure you don't want to discount those tickets? Are you sure this is going to work? Are you sure? Did they ask you that or not?
Regularly.
Yeah.
media particularly, but the board members privately. Never became an issue at the board meetings, but it definitely guys came into my office saying, what are we doing here? Are we okay? Are we doing it? And I was lucky that the president, because it's a nonprofit organization that runs the games, the president of the nonprofit organization was a true believer in me. He believed I could do this. And you got to remember that when they did the job search, they interviewed 32 people and couldn't find the right person. So when they settled on me, there was a lot of hope that I was the right guy because they had seen
Uh-huh.
wasn't the right guy, right? They'd seen that a number of times. And it was partly about a sense of humor, partly that in the interview, I read my interview notes after I got the job. And there was a couple sort of pivotal points where they said in the interview that it looked like I was going to be the right guy for the job. And so I didn't want to let those people that had made that good faith decision, didn't want to let them down either.
What were those things that made them more confident in you?
Yeah, there was two sort of things. I'm a fan, so I was coming in to run this game for a team called the Stampeders, but that's not the team I support. That's not the team I cheer for. But the game president was supposed to be absolutely neutral, that you were not going to take sides because you didn't
Yeah.
know who was going to win. So I had to be neutral. And so they asked me, I'd lived in a city called Edmonton that had a team. I had lived in Calgary for a while, but I had been living mostly out of Calgary. So when I was coming to Calgary, I was a newbie, a new guy living permanently or full-time in Calgary. And so they asked me, okay, it's the Western semifinal where they push up against who's going to go to the Grey Cup. Edmonton is playing and Calgary is playing. Who do you cheer for? And I said, what does it matter? Saskatchewan's not in. It's not even a game. And they laughed knowing that I wouldn't be cornered, right? That the media wouldn't corner me into making a decision and saying something I wasn't. And then I understood what the game was. The other thing that they asked me, what do you think your role will be with the actual on the field team? And I looked at them and said, sorry, I don't understand the question. This is a job to run a game, not to be involved with the team. I said, I'm sure I'll see them in the hall. I'll say hello. I'll talk to them. Maybe they'll even invite me out for a beer. But I said, I have no connection to the team. And they loved it because many of the people that were applying for this job were trying to get a full-time job with the team. And they saw it as a stepping stone. I shut that down right away and said, my focus is on the game. Yes, I'm going to be polite. Yes, I'm sure. And as it turned out, the president of the football club was a great supporter as well and helped me out in a lot of things I wouldn't have known as a new person that big game. So we had a great working relationship, but I never, ever to this day have put in an application to the team because was that not why I'm there? Had the team come and asked me, I might have said, let's talk, but I promised I wasn't there to get a job. So that was the two things cued on in my notes saying he's the right guy.
Yeah, and plus you prove your integrity throughout the whole thing. So in the beginning, you made this statement, we're not going to discount. So 12 hours before or 24 hours before, there was a press conference and they knew that you had 4,000 tickets that were unsold. What happened the night before that conference?
Put it in a context. We had weekly press conferences. I attended 52 of them. And
Oh, wow.
every single press conference, we did a weekly update. And it helped because the media knew that I wasn't hiding anything.
Mhm.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Monday morning, we were going to have a meeting, press conference. And every single one, they asked, when are you discounting tickets? 50 times they asked, when are you discounting a ticket? So the day that the week before the game, not even a week, 5 or 6 days before the game, they asked me again, when are you discounting the tickets? And my argument was, we are not going to discount these tickets. I think at that point, they thought I'd gone off the rails, that I'd lost it because the moment we had, that moment was the one we had. The first 50 times was easy. that time was harder to say we're not discounting tickets because game was 6 days away, 4,000 tickets, 10% of the seats not filled. There was a lot riding on it. And just my personal commitment was we weren't going to discount. So that day, there was no hesitation in my voice. There was not discounting. I will have to admit that was in the morning. At about 1 o'clock, I called a staff meeting and I said, okay, I promise we're not discounting. What are we going to do? And the
Yeah.
team, my group of employees, if you will, but I don't see them that way, but my employees, we all sat around and brainstormed, and somebody else came up with the idea of giving them to the charity groups that they could use it. And I grabbed that, and I just had a heck of an idea. So as a leader, you can never believe you have all the answers. You have to look to the people around you that might have better answers than you do. And this was a great answer. So we quickly put together a package, sent out the email before 4 o'clock to the association saying, do you want these tickets? We can offer you 20, 30, 50 tickets. Do you want them? And by morning, my email box was full of people who wanted the tickets. So when I went to by that point, we come daily to press conferences. There's a daily press conference now. So on Tuesday morning, 24 hours later, I walked in knowing that all of the tickets were gone. But at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I have to admit there was some doubt, like you had to say, what have I got myself into? And my response, as it almost always is, go to the people I trust and that trusted me and ask them for their opinion. And they gave me the answer.
Yeah, sometimes that's what you need is you need to have that sounding block that I call it a mastermind group almost. You're brainstorming and saying, okay, let's come up with some ideas. And you don't discount them or throw them out because, oh, I don't know if that'll work. You just you listen, and someone usually says invariably, they say, I don't know if you thought about this, but what about, and then when you do hear that, a lot of times that's the thing. That's the thing that solves the problem.
Oh,
And go ahead.
sorry. When the person said, how about charities? You could see collectively 7 light bulbs went on at the same time. We
Yeah.
all went, that's it. That's the response. That's what we need. And within minutes, we'd said, yep, we're going to do that. And half an hour later, we had the plan done and people were actioning the plan. So you have to move quick though, because I had that press conference the next morning. I wasn't going to go in twice saying we still have 4,000 tickets left.
Yeah. And you said you let the charities choose, but you did target veterans and was it disabled children organization?
Yeah, and we did but by targeting them, we targeted the organizations that represented those groups. So
Right.
that's who targeted, knowing that the response, if I went to a group that served veterans, I had to assume they were going to invite veterans, right?
Yeah.
I had to assume they were going to go to their membership and invite veterans. And we certainly included in the letter, please use these to support your groups. Don't sell them, just give them away.
Right.
And it worked out really well.
And why do you think this made a difference from discounting?
First of all, it told all of the fans, we're going to treat you fairly. You're not going to sit next to the guy who paid half the price that you did for the exact same seat. We showed them a respect. That was important. We showed the product respect. When you discount, when I was growing up, my parents had a small greenhouse. And maybe I learned it there. My dad hated discounting because he knew that all people would do was just wait until the end of the season and try and buy up everything. So he
Yeah.
tried not to discount in this little greenhouse. And it was a hobby, what made a living for the house, but paid for a lot of nice vacations. And he insisted we not do that. Maybe I learned it from him, that I will tell you though, Paul, I never made that connection. Dad told me never discount, so I didn't discount. It was just part of my DNA by then that you don't do that. If you discount tickets, if you discount your product, you're saying it's worth less than you were saying a day ago. Did you learn to distrust your product in a day? Did you learn to hate your product in a day? Was your product defective in a day? None of that was true. So ticket prices stay the same. We never, I don't think I did, I'm sure no one else did, look to the next year to say this will help the next team. We were looking at what was right for the game, what would do it.
Yeah.
As it turned out, everybody jumped on that model and started to follow it and say, that's exactly what that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that same thing. And as I say, now it's nearing the end of June. You'll have trouble getting tickets for the game in November because everybody buys now in advance because they know there will not be discounted tickets.
Or miraculous sale of 4,000 tickets overnight.
Yeah, but again, it's a little bit of a twist on things because we didn't make $1 on them, but we set a tone. And that is often important when we're doing things, that we set that tone and stick with it. So our customers and our staff know where we're going, how we're going to get there, and that you're willing to be flexible enough to fix it, right? Because it would have been embarrassing if I'd gone in on Tuesday. Yeah, after a year, you guys are right. We're going to discount those tickets. It would have just been embarrassing for everybody involved.
Yeah. When did you realize that buyer behavior had changed? Was it the following year or
Following year, when it sold out 4 months in advance, and it's just been creeping back now at 6 months in advance, that when we sold it, that's what worked. We knew it had a success, but we were all gone. Our organization no longer existed. It was another nonprofit running another game in another city. That's how it rolled over. It didn't have a continuity at that point. It does now, but it didn't at that point have a continuity.
looking back, what would have happened if you had discounted?
First of all, the cameras would have scanned across the game and shown 4,000 empty seats, which was not, you were not going to hide 10% of the seat, right? There's nothing we could do. We couldn't tell the cameras, we couldn't tell the national television cameras, don't look at the end zone. Don't point at the end zone because that's where the ball was going, right? That's where it was going to be. So we would have.
Where those seats were. That's where the seats were, in the end zone.
End zones. Yeah.
No,
they were in the end zones. And so we would have embarrassed the team. We would have embarrassed everybody with it. And I just wasn't willing to do that. Wasn't willing to go there.
Yeah. So the next level, what leadership lesson has stayed with you ever since that?
Commit to something, be willing to adapt, but not change the commitment. If you committed something, do it. You may have to adapt it. You may have to change it a little, and don't try to be a lone wolf. Look at the people around you. As I said, it wasn't my idea to give it away to charities. Somebody on my team thought of it, and we jumped on that, and it was the best thing we could have done. The people around you, I've never understood, at least in a North American context, Paul, why we go out and spend lots of time, energy, and dollars to recruit the best people to work at our companies. And then when they get there, tell them to sit down, shut up, and do it our way. Like, you're bringing in good people. Why don't you trust that they may have an idea that no one else has thought of, that you've never thought of? And when I took the idea of going to the charities, I told the board, I didn't ask, I told the board what we were going to do. They all said, that's the perfect solution. It was unanimously supported. I didn't need their permission to do it, but they're your boss. You keep them involved, right? You keep them engaged. So I told them, not one said, no, we shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. So the staff member, who I think was the event organizer, that wasn't their job. They could have easily said, Norman, you solve it. You're sitting in the chair, you solve it. They didn't. They came together because we all wanted the game to work. And so I couldn't expect that from the team, Paul, if I hadn't engaged them from the very beginning. If they didn't believe they had an input, so this is what I'm saying. We hire the best people and tell them, sit down and do it my way. Why? Ask them how they would solve it. They may come up with something that's brilliant. And as a leader, you're going to look brilliant because you adopted it, right?
Yeah.
You're not giving up anything. You're gaining.
Why do you think leaders often abandon those commitments too early?
I think there's a couple things, not the least of which is in North America, at least, most senior people only stay in their position 3 years. So they want to show something has changed dramatically because they're looking to that next job. They're looking to what is it I'm going to do next. And I want to show them that I can do it. So you never want to wear a mistake in North America. You don't want to say I made a mistake, because then other people are going to go, if you admit you made a mistake, then why would we hire you? So I think too often the senior leadership is always looking to their exit strategy. What is it that I am going to do next? And how am I going to get there? It's like you say, few of them are willing to burn their boats. Few of them are willing to say, I'm going to go all in on this and I'm going to do it. I think at the small and medium-sized enterprise where people are very close to it, they're more likely to do that because that's how they're feeding their family. It's how they're paying the mortgage, how the business is doing. In big corporations, you're gauged on the big things, not the small. And the small are often how we deal with our people. That is personal contact, that in with them, talking to them. If you're only there for 3 years, you really don't want to learn the names of everybody because you'll have to learn another group of names in 3 years. I dislike that style of management. I think our people are people and we need to.
Yeah. And I think humility. You don't know the answer and you look to your team for input. That's strength, I think. And a lot of people don't think of it that way, but I certainly do. And I think your team respects you for it too.
I teach a lot at university and the sessional lecturer, and I love it when students catch me. I'll say something in class, and most of my learners are adult learners. And so they'll look at me and go, yeah, no, our company tried that and it failed. So what else have you got? They keep you honest. If you admit you don't know all the answers, if you admit, and so I'll tell that, you give me a week, I'll be back to class and we'll talk about it. And then I go off and read everything I can, call people I know that know something about it with logistics. I might give you a call, Paul, and say, hey, student asked me this. What's your take on it? You have to admit you're not perfect. No one knows everything about everything. You've got to be able to say, I've got really good people working for me and I trust them and they'll steer me in the right direction when necessary.
Yeah. And what becomes possible when people trust that you're going to keep your word under pressure?
And I have a reputation in, oh my God, 30 years of business now. I have fired 2 people because I believe that the boss's job is to make everybody reach their maximum capacity. Sometimes people come to you and say, I'm just done with this particular job. Could you help me find another? And I will go out of my way to help them find a job because they've been good to us. They've given us 2, 4, 6, 8 years of their time and energy and their family's time and energy. We need to treat them with that respect. And so I hate the idea of firing somebody. I chose them. I vetted them. I brought them in. I taught. If they failed, whose fault is it, Pulse?
Yours.
Yeah.
You're responsible.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you see similar patterns of you've built trust in a team over time? And like you just said, you've even helped people get to the next level, even if it's not in your own organization.
Absolutely.
Do you believe that trust compounds over time?
Are you saying that as they stay longer with you, they get more trust? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I absolutely, because they see you actually living it. They see you actually doing it. I worked with a client recently. They were in some real financial trouble.
Yeah.
We were trying to fix the financial part of it. They were in trouble. The boss continued to take his vacations, continued to drive his Cadillac and all the rest until I talked to him and I said, you have a pickup at home. Drive that to work. Tell people that you're not driven by having the Cadillac and not driven by having the vacation in Paris and all of that. Skip your next vacation or do it at a local resort down the road and show that to people. And it was amazing when he did it, the attitude that changed in the staff because they said, now he's on board. Now he cares. because the outward signs were that. We think somehow that if we drive a pickup truck or we don't go on the Paris vacation, we're showing weakness, that we need to do those things to say, see, we're successful. See, we're going to be good. They
Yeah.
know when you're telling them don't buy any more paper for a month, they know where they are. And you can't fool them with a Cadillac and a trip.
Yeah. And you're right. And the staff sees that and they can tell when you stop caring.
Yep.
Even if you still care, but if you outwardly appear that you don't, then you don't. Perception is everything. It happens with organizations all the time when the, like you said before, the smaller companies, they're closer knit. They have to feed their families. They're in it together. But as the companies grow, the growth exposes friction. It exposes the leaks in the operations and in the onboarding and all of those things. When you have more, when you add more management and more things, some of that gets diluted. Some of that original closeness and intimacy gets diluted, I think. And that's what happens when, if you don't grow carefully, sometimes organizations they outgrow their what's working now, and they have to shift changes, have to make changes to their how they do business. And
There
I'm
are
sure that you see.
companies, there are companies that maintain them, that work hard at it, but it's a conscious thought. It doesn't
Yeah,
just happen by osmosis. They actually say, how do we engage people? And I love those companies. I love working for the ones that say, of course, we're going to do that. Yes, we'll step back. We'll do the job. So, yes, I agree with you.
yeah, yeah. So, Norman, it's been a pleasure. Norman is active on LinkedIn. He shares insights around leadership, organizational change, and what we've been talking about, and navigating complexity. How do people connect with you, Norman?
Rest is LinkedIn. Look up Norman Leach, the Chaos Navigator. If you see the
Yeah.
Chaos Navigator after it, that's mine. There's, I think, one other person on LinkedIn with the name Norman Leach, but he doesn't use Chaos Navigator. So that's the best way. From there, we can exchange emails, phone numbers, etc. once we've made that connection.
Yeah, and be sure to mention that you heard about him on the Lead Machine Growth Show, so he knows that you've heard this conversation. You've also got a new book. You've got 12 books, I think you said, but you've got a new book coming out. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a new book. It was a textbook. It's the first textbook I'm writing. The others were commercial books to be sold in bookstores. This is a textbook on using AI in marketing and yet keeping it human, making sure that we don't lose that contact we were just talking about with our customers,
Yeah.
because that is AI is not a bad thing. I will say that. It's we go through these inflection points. We went through the Industrial Revolution. We went cottage industry to factories. We introduced the automobile and got rid of horses as a way of doing business. We're at one of those inflection points where AI is going to change everything we do. I'm telling my students, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI better than you do.
Right.
So they need to look at it. We need to look at it, but we need to keep that human touch. So the whole book is, how do you use AI? How do you use it to make your business stronger without losing that connection to your customers?
Love it. And maybe we'll have you back on the show once that book comes out. I'd love to check that out. It's a textbook, so you could use it as a textbook, but I'm sure there's some real nuggets in there
Well,
that can help any business.
the company is publishing it is Business Express, or sorry, Business Experts Press. Sorry,
Yeah.
they write their textbooks so it could either be sold on the shelf or used in the classroom. So it's
Okay.
hybrid. It goes over. So if you're not in school, it's not the textbook that you might have remembered from your university days 30 years ago. Much shorter, sharper, much more hands-on feel to it.
Nice. Nice. Norman, what I love about this story is that many people think leadership is tested when you make the promise. What this conversation is shows leadership gets tested when keeping the promise becomes expensive. And I know a lot of people were rooting for you, but a lot of people were biting their nails too. Congratulations on that big win and the bronze plaque and all of that. And I wish you the best. As we close, remember faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal until metal until next time On the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyan. Norman Leach, thank you for coming on the show today. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
You too. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyan, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.